Hello! Welcome back to Lergle Stories. My name's Logan and I'm glad you're here. Before we get started today, we've got a special announcement. This Sunday is a very special day for one boy called Robert, who turns 4 years old on Sunday. So happy birthday, Robert, and I hope you have a brilliant day full of fun. Also, yesterday was one Charlie's 9th birthday. So happy birthday to Charlie too. So, we are on chapter 15 and 16 of Anthony Ant by Linda Dennis. And these are the last 2 chapters of the book. So we're going to find out everything that happens. I can't wait to find out. Can you? Big thank you to Austin Macauley Publishers before we start for letting us read this book today. Remember to subscribe to Lergle Stories if you haven't already, so you don't miss any more once we get on to the next story. And if you haven't caught up yet on Anthony Ant, then you can go over to the Lergle Stories YouTube channel and catch up there. Let's get started. Now, last time, there was a colony of ants, the red fire ants, that attacked Anthony's colony. And Anthony had to go and find his friends, Ted and Travis, the owls, to try and help out. And they had an idea that they would scatter rice inside the anthill, and the red fire ants eat the rice. And even though they love feasting on the rice, it causes them to become very ill and it can kill them. So they did that because the whole place was on fire and Queen Anastasia's eggs were in danger. So they had to do what they had to do. So we're going to find out how all of that sorted out. Chapter 15, The Aftermath. Ted and Travis were quite right about red fire ants' fate if they ate rice. When daylight came, several hundred dead red fire ants were carried out of the colony and were placed in a very deep ditch that the worker ants had dug early in the morning. This would then be covered over once the final job had been done. There was lots of clearing up to do, and Anthony needed to find out exactly what had happened at the other end of the colony where the fire had begun. Just as he was thinking this, there was a knock at the door. It was Special Advisor Aaron Ant. "Morning, Anthony," he said. "Can I come in for a moment, please?" "Yes, of course. Have a seat," replied Anthony, directing him towards the comfy sofa behind him. "I'm calling an urgent meeting this morning at 11:30, Anthony. Everyone in this colony needs to be there, as I need to explain what happened in the early hours of this morning. There has been a tragedy, Anthony, and firstly, I need to speak to you." Anthony immediately saw from the look in Special Advisor Aaron Ant's eyes that there was something coming that he was not going to like. Anthony sat back in his chair and waited with bated breath for what he was about to be told. The fire in the early hours was fast and furious, Anthony, and there has been massive damage to our colony and also the loss of lives, Special Advisor Aaron Ant said gravely. "I am saying the loss of lives, Anthony, but the truth is, I am not 100% sure if this is correct. I need to emphasize to you that many are missing or dead." Anthony stared at the floor and didn't know how to respond. "I need to tell you, Anthony, that at this moment in time, we do not know where your family is. The area where your parents live has been completely devastated. The fire crew have been working all night to put the fire out and to rescue as many families or family members as possible. I am so very sorry to bring you this news, Anthony, but I did not want you to hear it from anyone else. Anthony was unable to move. He couldn't take the words in. Special Advisor Aaron Ant leant across and put his strong hand on his shoulder and then turned and left. Anthony sat motionless for possibly half an hour. How could this be? We were all together only a short time ago, enjoying the celebrations of our parents' anniversary. This really can't be true, Anthony said gently to himself. For another 5 or 10 minutes, Anthony sat and pondered the whole situation and decided that, in fact, the best thing for him to do was to go and see the damage for himself and make a start on getting to the truth about what had happened to his family. Special Advisor Aaron Ant spoke to the whole colony at 11:30 as promised. He explained the full impact of the Red Fire Ant attack on the colony and the loss of family and friends. As with Anthony, he could not rule out whether family and friends had been able to escape or whether they had died in the fire. It was the most heartbreaking speech Special Advisor Aaron Ant had ever had to give. Queen Anastasia sat at the back of the meeting, but was too upset to speak. However, everyone noted her presence, and they felt honoured that she was there for them. I must say, I'm hoping very much that Anthony's family is only missing. Chapter 16, The Knighthood. Anthony went to the area where his family lived, but did not recognize most of it, as it was completely burnt down. There were worker ants and volunteers trying to clear up and also to look for loved ones. It was a tragic scene. Anthony sat down close by and just looked on at all the carnage and started to ponder the idea of whether his mum, dad, and brothers and sisters were still alive but had temporarily fled the area. It was a possibility, but was he clutching at straws thinking that? Over the next few days, everyone he met was sad and upset about what had happened. They were extremely sorry and sympathetic towards Anthony, knowing what had happened to him. This didn't really help him, but he was grateful for their kindness. One late afternoon, there was a knock at Anthony's door. He just shouted, "Come in," as he really couldn't find the effort or enthusiasm to get up and answer it. When he turned around, he was aghast to see the Partners in Crime Syndicate standing before him. "What are you lot doing here?" he said aggressively. "Have you come to cause more trouble? I don't know how you've the audacity to come to my door." None of the men spoke for a minute. Then Adam Ant spoke up and said they had all wanted to pay their respects to him, as they had heard on the grapevine that he had actually saved Queen Anastasia, Special Advisor Aaron Ant, the Queen's eggs, the nursery where all the babies were, in fact the entire Queen's quarters. If it hadn't been for him, there would probably be no colony at all. Anthony stared at them for a minute and could not take in what he was hearing. He had put all this to the back of his mind, as it was all part of his duties, and since then there had been so much else to occupy his mind and to cope with in restructuring the colony. Antony could see that the men were offering an olive branch, which means they were hoping to come to some peace between them, and wanted to put all their wrongdoings behind them. He couldn't blame them for that, and in a way, he was pleased they had taken the trouble to try and make amends. So he thanked them for dropping by and for thinking of him. The men left quietly, saying thank you. That's nice. A week later, Antony received a letter from Queen Anastasia. It said, after receiving a wealth of praise for his actions and bravery in the Red Fire Ant attack, and for saving her life in her quarters, she was going to give him the highest honour possible, a knighthood. There would be a special ceremony arranged for the following week, and everyone in the colony had been invited. This had never, ever happened to any other special soldier of Her Majesty's protection team before, and it was a great honour. Antony was quite humbled by it, and didn't really feel that he warranted a knighthood. After all, he was just doing his duty to protect Queen Anastasia, and that's all he ever wanted to do. The special day soon came around, and Antony was preparing himself for the occasion, but he could not help but think about his family and how they would have been so very proud of him. He had gone to the site many times to see if there had been any more information or developments that might indicate that his family was still alive. He had even wandered over the nearby fields to see if he could find any clues, but to no avail. The time had come for the ceremony to begin, and Antony was already in his very smart uniform to be honoured by the colony and the Queen. The ceremony was to be held in a luxurious banqueting hall in the Queen's quarters. It was a huge hall, which was essential considering the whole colony had to be squeezed in. Antony was all ready and waiting just outside the Queen's quarters until he was called in by a special footman who would then escort him to the front of the great hall to Her Majesty, the Queen. He looked around and vividly remembered the early morning fire alarm going off and then spying on the 2 red fire ants just about where he was standing now. Just then, something attracted his attention. He could hear a tapping of some sort. He couldn't quite make out where it was coming from. Then he realized it was the small tunnel he had used that morning to get out into the woods. He walked gingerly down to the fire door, where there was still someone tapping. He pushed the door open with all his might, hoping to scare off whoever was there, as he was now extremely cautious after the attack. "Good grief, Antony, what are you doing? It's only me, and I've been tapping with my beak for over 15 minutes trying to get someone's attention," said a very indignant Ted the Tawny Owl. "Oh, Ted, I'm so sorry, but we've got to be so careful now after the attack," explained Antony. "Anyway, what's up, Ted? How can I help you?" asked Antony. "Well, you can start by letting your family come in," Ted shouted with delight. "What?" exclaimed Antony in rather a high-pitched voice. "Yes, here we are," called all Antony's family in unison. "Ted found us floating in the swamp on a bit of cardboard that we had managed to climb onto when we escaped the fire," elaborated Alice, Antony's mother. "Ted was flying past and we saw him dive for a fish, which he missed, but then he saw us floating on the cardboard. He carefully lifted the cardboard and transported us straight here. If it hadn't been for Ted, I'm not sure where we would have ended up, laughed Albert, Anthony's father, and everyone else laughed too. Please come in quickly, all of you, and Ted, if you can squeeze in, or come around to the other main entrance and I will get you in there. I'm about to be knighted. Don't ask the details right now. There's too much to explain. Just come in, exclaimed Anthony excitedly. The whole family came in, and Ted squeezed through the main entrance with Anthony's help. Although this did prove quite an ordeal, as you can imagine. Owls aren't supposed to be inside anthills. The footman arrived, and Anthony was led into the luxurious hall along with his family and Ted. The rest of the colony clapped and cheered when they caught sight of them and were ecstatic with delight. The ceremony was very moving, and Queen Anastasia knighted Anthony in true style. He stood proudly in front of his very happy family. He never thought becoming a special soldier to the Queen would end like this. He is now Sir Anthony Ant. What an achievement. Well, phew! I am so glad that Anthony's family were found, and so glad that they managed to escape. Well, everything seems to have worked out for Anthony in the end, which sometimes it seemed a bit hopeless for him after all the bad things that were happening to him. But in the end, everything worked out well, and I'm very glad about that. I really enjoyed this story. I hope you did too. Just before we go, we'll quickly say happy birthday again to Robert and happy birthday to Charlie. See you next time. Bye.